data visualization is probably the most important part of data analysis. The human brain is built to easily extract insights from visual data in a way that we really struggle to with purely numerical data. So if you don't make good plots or charts, no one is ever going to know about the analysis that you did. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to use the Plotly library to make rich interactive plots in Python. Let's get started. To get started, open a new Google Colab notebook. You can do this by searching Google Colab on Google or your favorite search engine, and then clicking on New Notebook. I have a notebook open here. I'm going to rename it to Univariate DataViz. So go ahead and do that on your own script as well. In this lesson, we're going to be working purely with univariate data. That means we're going to be visualizing one variable at a time. In a future lesson, we'll look at visualizing multiple variables at a time. Here is our list of learning objectives. If you like, you can pause the video and read through these, but we're going to come back to them at the end of the video. Let's get started by importing the libraries that we're going to use. I'm going to make a new text section and call it imports, and then a new code section where I'm going to type the following: import plotly.express as px. So this is the Plotly library we're going to be using, and we name it px so that we can easily access it that way. And then we're also going to import some data from a Vega datasets package. So just type this with me: from Vega_datasets import data. And we can press Command or Control Enter to run this. So now let's look at how to visualize single quantitative variables. In this lesson, we're going to look at how to visualize both quantitative and categorical variables. Quantitative variables are things like age and height. These are numeric continuous variables. And then we're going to look at categorical variables, things like sex or race. Those have distinct categories. So let's make a new section and call it quantitative data. And then we make a subsection for the first type of plot which we're going to see, which are histograms. Okay. And under here, we're going to make our first histogram. Let's first import the data we're going to use. The data set we're going to use for this is called tips. And we're going to get it from the Plotly Express library, so px. So to extract that from Plotly Express, we type px dot data dot tips. And then we open and close a pair of parentheses. And then on the new line, I'm just going to type tips so that I can print that data set to my viewer. And if I press Control Enter or Command Enter now, we can see that tips dataset. This is a fun little dataset that a waiter in the US collected on people that tipped them over a number of days. You can see the total bill that the person paid and then how much they tipped, the sex of the person who paid, whether they smoked, the day, time, and the size of the party, how many people ate at that event. So for our first histogram, we're going to look at the amount of the tip. So let's see if we can visualize this. We're going to open a new code chunk, and we're going to type a very simple piece of code. We're going to type px. This is to access the Plotly Express library, as you remember. Okay. And then within this, there's a function called histogram, very nicely. And we're going to give it first the name of our data set, which is tips. And then the name of what we want to plot on the x-axis, x equals. Let's look at it again. We wanted to plot the tip variable. And for tip, we're going to put it inside of quotes. So tip. And now we can press Command Enter. And voila, we have our very first data viz. As you can see, it's interactive. So you can hover over different sections. And we can see, for example, that in between 1.75 and 2.24, there were 55 people that gave that tip amount. So 55 people tipped between 1.75 and 2.24. And notice that Plotly also has this nice toolbar at the top. The most useful thing here usually is going to be this button to download the plot as a PNG if you wanted to send it as a picture to someone. So very simple. In a single line of code, we've made a very nice histogram. Let's get some practice on this. I'm going to make a new code section and give you some practice. So practice. And for your practice, we're going to use the bird strikes dataset. So using the bird strikes dataset from Vega datasets, which I'm going to show you how to get in a second, I'll make a histogram of the speed distribution. So how fast the planes were going when they collided with these birds. Okay. And let me show you how to extract the bird strikes dataset. So bird strikes, we can call it anything we want, but I'm calling it bird strikes for now, is equal to data.bird strikes. Actually, bird strikes is kind of a long name. Let's just call it strikes. Okay, so we're extracting bird strikes from this data module of, if you remember, Vega datasets. We haven't talked fully about modules and packages and all of those, but we'll come back to those in a future video. Let's quickly now just show you the strikes dataset. As you can see, each row pertains to a specific bird strike, and what I want you to do is visualize in a histogram the speed variable, speed IAS in knots. Let me put that there, okay? Make a histogram of the speed distribution, which is speed IAS in knots. So pause the video and try that out. Now we may want to make some customizations to this histogram. One way to go about doing this is to look at the help documentation for the function. So let's go ahead and do that. In a new code chunk here, I'm going to type px.histogram and then a question mark. And if I press Control Enter there, that will open the help documentation. And if you spend some time reading through these, you'll understand the different arguments or the different parameters. It can be quite dense and hard to parse when you're first getting started. So what I usually do is for a new function, I just copy all of this and paste it in ChatGPT and ask it to extract the specific thing that I want. In this case, I do know what I want though. I want to change the labels, I want to change the title, and I want to change the color as well. So at the moment, the label at the bottom just says tip, but let's make that a bit more explicit. So we're going to write the following, type along with me, label or labels equals, and then this is going to be a dictionary, which we use open and close braces for. We're going to teach you about dictionaries soon. And I'm going to change the label tip to something better, like maybe tip, and then I'll put a $sign there. So it's clear that the currency is US dollars. And if I run this, I can see now that that's a better label. Let's add a title. So I put a comma, press enter, and type title equals distribution of tips. And let's check that and make sure it works. Yes, that looks good. And now to change the color, I'm going to type the following, color discrete sequence. And this needs to be a list, which means I need to open and close a pair of square brackets. And inside of that, I'll put a color. So we could try something like red, and that makes it red. But the color I like is called light sea green. So there we have it there. Now, where do you get these color names from? These are base CSS colors developed by the Mozilla organization. So you can just search CSS color names Mozilla on Google, and that should take you to a page where you can see the lists of different colors. Here we have dark gray, dark khaki, and so on. In addition to the color names, you can also use these things which are called hex color codes, where hex stands for hexadecimal because they have 6 digits. And the beauty of hex color codes is they are not limited in the way that color names are. One nice way to get hex color codes is, again on the internet, you search color picker. Color picker. And if you do this on Google, it will give you automatically a color picker. If you don't get that, you can just open any of the other color pickers that you see there. And from here, we can pick a specific color. Let's go with maybe a light blue here. Okay, this color looks kind of like the graph network color, so I'm going to use that. And I can replace my light sea green with that color and run that. And there's our final plot. Now here is a further practice question for you. So practice. What I want you to do is update the bird strikes histogram. Specifically use a hex color code, add a title, and change the x-axis label. Change the x-axis label to speed, in parentheses, nautical miles per hour, because that's what a knots means, nautical miles per hour. So go ahead, pause the video, and try that out. So now you know the basics of making univariate plots. Those are plots of single variables with histograms. Now let's look at how to make plots of categorical variables, mostly with bar charts and also with pie charts. So I'm going to make a new text section, and let's give it the title of categorical data. And under that, let's start with a bar chart. Before we make the plot, let's take another look at the tips dataset so we can see what we are going to plot. We're going to try to make a bar chart of this sex variable here, with a female and male. In order to make a bar chart, we can use the bar function from Plotly Express. So I'm going to type px, let's remove this, type px.bar, okay, and our data frame is again tips, and we're going to put in the x-axis the sex variable, sex. Now if you run this, we can see now that there's a bar for males and one for females. What you might notice though is that this hover behavior is a bit weird. It seems that each individual is being represented by a small rectangle, and this is not actually what we want. The issue is that the bar function is actually made to deal with a slightly different kind of data. So actually, when you want to plot a single categorical variable, in Plotly Express, you're not actually going to use the bar function, you're going to use the histogram function. Now, statisticians will hate this because technically histograms are only supposed to pertain to continuous data, but it turns out that if you want to make a single univariate plot of a categorical variable, you're going to use the histogram function in Plotly. Now let's go ahead and make some modifications. We're first of all going to add an actual text label with text auto equals true, similar to what we did with the numeric histograms. So let's run this. And now you have the counts for each of the bars. We can also make the bars colored by sex. To do this, in addition to x equals sex, we're going to type color equals sex as well, and put a comma there, and we run that. And here notice that I'm putting all of these on the same line, but we can also put them on new lines, so each argument can go on a new line the way we had above. So let's do that so it doesn't get too long. So put this on a new line, new line, new line. That makes it a bit easier to read. And finally, let's add a title. So title equals distribution of customers by gender. Whoops, by gender. Now this looks pretty good. However, I would say that the legend here is not needed because we already have the bars labeled. So we're going to try to remove that. In order to remove that, the best thing to do is to assign this to its own variable. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to call it maybe tips by sex. And what we're doing here is we're assigning all of this code into this single variable here. Okay. And let's remove some of this space, and we press Command Enter. So now we have created this tips by sex variable. And if you put it on a new line and you press Control Enter, it will return the value of tips by sex. And we can use a method on this tips by sex in order to update the layout and to remove this legend. And here's how we do it. Dot update layout. Okay, show legend equals false. Show legend equals false. And I seem to have gotten an error here. It says invalid property specified. Did you mean show legend? It looks like I should have this as a small l. So let's try that again. And now we have the same plot but without the legend. Now here is a practice question for you. I want you to again use the bird strikes dataset. Using the bird strikes dataset, you're going to make a bar chart of the frequency of bird strikes by the phase of the flight. That is, was the flight taking off or landing? Okay. And you can look through the dataset to find that variable. And I also want you to add text labels to the bars. That is counts of the number of individuals in each bar. I want you to use custom colors and also add a title. And as I type this, I remember that I didn't show you quite how to change the colors here. So remember that in the previous section, we had used color discrete sequence equals blah, blah, blah to change the color. We can do a similar thing here. So let's copy that and paste it here. But here, because we have two, whoops, let's delete this so it starts at the same level. It's not super important in this case, but it helps. So here, because we have two bars or two categories, we need to have two colors in here. So we can have that first hex code, and for the second one, let's just put, I don't know, let's put a gray, for example. And so now we have these two different colors. This is not a great color, but it's just for illustration. So use a similar set of custom colors, pick maybe nice colors, and use those to create that bar chart. Next, let's look at sorting the categories in your bar chart. It's often useful to be able to dictate a specific order in which the bars appear. So let's make a new section and call it sorting categories, maybe a subsection, sorting categories. And in a new code chunk, let's actually import a new dataset, which we'll call election. So election equals px, so again it's coming from Plotly Express, dot data dot election, and let's view it. So the election dataset has each row pertaining to a specific district, and it tells us who won the Montreal mayoral election in some year that I don't remember. And so you have the number of votes for Coderre, the number for Bergeron, the number for Joly, and then who won that specific district. And this is the variable we're going to plot. The column we're going to plot is winner. So let's go ahead and type px.histogram, and our data set is election, and our x-axis is going to be winner. So now we have that random order. So this is the default order. But let's say we wanted to change it and have Bergeron first, then Joly, then Coderre. We can do the following. We're going to type category orders is equal to, then we provide a, category orders is equal to a dictionary. And then we're going to say winner, colon, and we give the orders as a list. So let's start with Bergeron, comma, Joly, Joly, I forgot how to type Joly, and last but not least, what's his name? Coderre. And this is getting long, so maybe let's put these arguments on a new line. And now we can run this. And now we have Bergeron first, Joly, and then Coderre. Now, what if you wanted to arrange these in just ascending order or descending order? This is often useful. It may not be that useful in this case with only 3 categories, but if you had many more categories, defining the custom order like this would get painful. So we may want to arrange them in ascending or descending. Let's copy this and open a new code chunk. And we're going to get rid of the category orders. And we're going to assign our existing plot to an object. Let's call it maybe election chart. So we assign that to a variable, or you may call it an object as well. And let's run that. And now we're going to call the following: election chart.update x-axis. Okay, x-axis. This is the kind of thing that if you don't remember it, you can either check the documentation, check Google, or just ask ChatGPT. So category order equals total descending. That will arrange those in descending order. Let's try that. So there we have it in descending order. And then we can try ascending order. Very nice. All right, so now I want you to do some practice. So again, you're going to use the famous bird strikes dataset. Okay, using bird strikes, I want you to create a sorted bar chart of origin of bird strikes by origin state. Okay, and let me just show you that dataset one more time. Bird strikes. You can see that somewhere in here, there's an origin state. Okay, so I want you to make a sorted bar chart of those, sorted in descending order. By origin state. Now let's make another small section and call it horizontal bar charts. So when you have a lot of data on your bar chart, this is not a good example here because you only have 3, but when you have lots of data, it can get hard to fit in all of the labels on the x-axis. And so a good way to fix that is just to flip it and turn this into a horizontal bar chart. So I'm just going to copy this. And this is very simple. Let's open a new code chunk. And instead of x equals winner, we just set y equals winner. And all of a sudden, boom, we have a nice horizontal bar chart. So as you can imagine, you can have many names here, and the names can be quite long, and it won't be too hard to read. So now you understand how to use bar charts to plot your categorical data. Let's look at another type of plot, which is pie charts. So let's make a new section, and call it pie charts. Pie charts are quite useful when you have a limited number of categories. If you have many categories, you shouldn't use a pie chart because it's hard to tell the difference between the slices of the pie. But if you have a limited number of categories, it can make sense. Let's use our pie chart on the tips dataset. We're going to type px.pie. So it's a very simple function there. And for a pie chart, because there's no x-axis or y-axis, the argument is called names. So names equals, and let's plot the variable day. Okay, so So the day is the day that the customer came in. So here we can see Sunday, Saturday, Thursday, and Friday. Now this default output from Plotly is a bit hard to parse because the legend is over here. It would be better to have those labels actually in the pie itself. And to make this change, we're going to again have to assign this to a variable and call a method on that variable. So let's do tips by day is equal to, and so we're storing that in this variable, and we're going to call a method on that, tips by day, dot, and let me look up my notes to find that method. It's called update traces. Okay, these are the sorts of things that I recommend, again, that you Google, because remembering them is pretty hard. And then we're going to type text info. Text info helps us define what shows in there, is equal to the string % plus label. Okay, so if you run this now, you can see you have both the label and the %. If you want only the label, you put just that. If you want only the %, you put just that, or you leave out that argument entirely. But here we want the % and the label. Okay, now here's a practice question for you. I'm going to open a new code section. And again, using the bird strikes dataset, hopefully you're not getting tired of this dataset. I want you to make a pie chart of the distribution of bird strikes by wildlife size. So look into that dataset, find the wildlife size variable, make a pie chart of it, and include percentages and labels inside the pie. Okay, so that's basically all we're going to cover for this lesson. Let's look at our list of learning objectives and see if you've mastered these. So by now you should feel comfortable generating histograms for quantitative data using Plotly Express. It's just px.histogram and a bunch of other arguments or parameters. Then also you feel comfortable using bar charts and pie charts for categorical data, also using Plotly Express. You remember that for bar charts, you're still using the histogram function, even though technically we don't call those histograms. And for pie charts, it's just the pie function, so px.pie. And you know some basics of customizing the graph appearances and labels. Congratulations on getting started with data visualization. As you can see, with just a few lines of code, you can make very rich interactive charts using the Plotly Express library. Later on in the course, we're going to show you how to incorporate these visualizations into reports and dashboards that you can easily share with your colleagues. So congrats again, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.